here are 3 ways that you can improve your credit score starting today. Having a great credit score is a really big win for any entrepreneur because it allows you to get access to capital that allows you to grow your business, to buy more equipment, maybe to hire some employees or have a larger marketing budget. But besides that, having a great credit score can actually save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest payments over the course of your life. Now, of course, it really depends from person to person because not everybody buys the same things. You might be buying a $100,000 house and somebody else might be buying a $700,000 or $800,000 house. And so obviously the interest payments and the amount that you guys are both paying on interest is very, very different, but having a great credit score would definitely benefit both of you. So the first thing that you can do is make sure that you never have any late payments. It's so important to have a great credit payment history. And the way that you do that is usually just make your payments on time, but I actually recommend that people make their payments before. So what I like to do is I set up auto pay so that my credit card charges my bank account on the earliest day possible. So that means that whenever I get to the actual payment date, I've already made my payment and the credit card is reporting as me having a lower balance than I did before the payment. That benefits me immensely because I'm always maintaining a lower credit utilization. Now we're gonna get into utilization here in just a second, but the point here is making sure that all your payments are on time. If you've ever had a situation where you had a late payment, there are credit cleaning companies out there. Definitely reach out to them and see what they can do to improve your credit score. It's usually worth the investment to pay somebody to clean up your credit a little bit. One of the coolest things about credit is that you can also transfer history from somebody else. So let's say maybe you're 18, 19 years old, you don't really have too much credit, but maybe your parents have credit. Maybe your dad just happens to have a credit card that has a $30,000 limit or a $40,000 limit and it's 20 years old. Maybe you have a credit card where you have a late payment on it, but your dad has never made a late payment. And so he has those 20 years of history of no late payment. If your dad adds you as an authorized user, that really benefits your credit history. So basically those entire 20 years, even though you might only be 18, 19 years old, the entire 20 years of your dad's credit history and that on-time payment history gets transferred onto you. And so now it's reporting to your credit profile. If he can add you as an authorized user, it gets transferred to your credit profile. It starts reporting to your credit profile and the bureaus are like, oh wow, this guy or this girl has a great credit history because they have 20 years of repayment history on time. So the key here is on time. That's point number 1, making sure that you're always making on-time payments. On-time payments are very important. I have over 30 credit cards personally, and I just set up auto pay on all of them. Way back in the day, I just wasn't really a fan of auto pay. I don't even know why, to be honest, but I would just set up little reminders on my calendar. So I'm like, hey, this day I have to pay that card, and then this card I pay on Friday, and then next week I have to pay that card. So I literally have events in my calendar for every single credit card. I've definitely learned a lot, and auto pay is the best way to go, guys. Auto pay is definitely the easiest to keep track of, and that makes sure that you never have any late payments. If you get a credit card, make sure you set it up on auto pay and then also set it to the earliest date that you possibly can make that payment. And that shows real responsibility to the bank. You're building up a nice credit history and you're building a relationship with them, which will open the door for more credit later on. Number 2, making sure that your utilization is low. Now we talked about this a little bit just a while ago. Utilization is very important to creditors because they're like, hey, this guy or this girl is using 90% of the credit on their credit card. We're not going to give them more credit. The easiest time to get credit is when you don't need it. And if you're using 90% of a credit card or 90% of all the available credit that you have on maybe multiple credit cards, that shows to the bank, that signals to them that, hey, this person needs money. And if you need money, it's very hard to get credit because they want to cut their losses. They want to minimize their risk. It does not fit their risk model to give you more money when you need money. They want to work with people who absolutely do not need the money. Let's go ahead and dive into the utilization first. The utilization piece, you want to keep it below 20%. So ideally, the best possible utilization is between 5 and 7% utilization, but Keep in mind, that's on every single individual card. That means that doesn't matter what the limit is, on every single card, you're between 5 and 7%. It's not across your entire portfolio. So let's say you have a $5,000 credit card and you have a $100,000 credit card. If your $5,000 credit card is maxed out, but you have a zero balance on the $100,000 credit card, overall, your entire portfolio of credit cards, it's about 5% utilized, less than 5% utilized. But that does not count because you have 100% utilization and you have zero. And so overall, you're still violating that 20% rule. You have to make sure that the $5,000 credit card is below 20% and the other one is below 20%. Make sure you make that distinguishment when you're making your payments and you're paying down each card individually. Every individual account has to be below 20%, and that would boost your score in most cases. Now, obviously, that's not something that I can guarantee to you. It depends on a lot of different factors, but I've seen it drastically improve credit scores as people pay down their credit cards below 20%. If you want to have an ideal credit score, it's going to have to be between 5 and 7%, but below 20% should get you to a really, really good place with your credit. Now, the other part of utilization is that if you're not utilizing any of your credit, if you have your credit cards super low credit utilization, like 5 to 7%, you don't need credit, you're signaling to the bank that you don't need credit, make sure that you're still opening credit cards. Just because you don't need money today, just because you don't have an opportunity in front of you to use that credit, doesn't mean that you should stop applying for credit. I always recommend that people apply whenever they have the opportunity. Now, the third way to raise your credit score is to open diversified accounts. Your credit score is not just dependent on credit cards. Most people think it's just credit cards that affect your credit score, but it can actually improve way more if you have a good mix. The credit bureaus want to see that you have a decent mix of credit, so different types of credit, mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, retail cards, all these different types of credit, and you have a good history with them. So that means that a prolonged history is going to improve your credit score. So if you have 5 years or 10 years, the higher you can get your average age of all your credit accounts, that's going to improve your credit score. So if you have 10 years or more, that's how people get into the 800 club. Now, it's not to say that it's not possible to get into the 800 club with a lower average age, but it's a lot easier when you have such a long credit history, and again, no late payments, low utilization, and then you have a good mix of credit. Creditors can see hey, this person is paying off our credit card, we're gonna report it to the bureaus, and the bureau then makes that call where they're like, hey, this person has a good credit score because they have a good mix of accounts, they have several different types of credit, and they're paying them all off well. They're paying as agreed is what it's called, and they have a good credit history with us. We're able to give them a good credit score, which will allow them to get more credit because again, this person has signaled that they do not need credit. So if they're falling in line with all this criteria, it usually means that that person does not need credit. So the bureaus then rate you well with a good credit score, a high credit score, and then credit card companies are willing to give you more credit because they see that you're a very, very low risk client. All right, guys, this is 3 ways that you can improve your credit score, and I hope to see you all on the next video.